We are live, the Broadway Shuffle, episode 5, the day after the destruction in Pullman, with Conrad and Zyler. I'm Brennan. We're missing Clayton today. He's got a good excuse, though. He's got his girlfriend's birthday, so we're going to let him miss this episode while he's out celebrating his girlfriend. But thank y'all for tuning in. It's not going to be as fun as episode as we would have hoped coming off the loss to Washington State, but nonetheless, we thank you. You can follow us on our YouTube channel at the Broadway Shuffle, a Texas Tech sports podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe too. So we've seen some of y'all comment lately. It's been a lot of fun to see some people comment their thoughts and opinions from the team and what they think of our episodes, which is a lot of fun. And then you can follow us on our social media channels as well at the Broadway Shuffle and on X at the Broadway Shuffle. No Broadway Shuffle available on X. So, gentlemen, here we are after the weekend in Pullman. I mean, Conrad, we launched last week the state of Conrad's Kool-Aid Factory, and we were hoping to be chugging some Cougar Juice here after this game, but it's not. I don't think the Cougar Juice came out right. So, Conrad, what is the Kool-Aid Factory looking like here after the loss to Washington State?
So it is with sadness in my heart that I have to recall all the Cougar Juice that was ordered last week. It was a defective product. It did not work the way we had hoped. And also after last night, something that I was notified of early this morning in the wee hours of the morning is that 3/4 of our workforce has quit. We've lost the people making the Kool-Aid. The executive team's still here with the vision for the Kool-Aid. Brennan's still cleaning the factory. But we've lost a significant amount of our staff, which actually doesn't hurt us that bad because the demand for Texas Tech football Kool-Aid has greatly diminished over the last 6-7 hours, you can tell. So the Kool-Aid Factory, it's still a thing. It's still open, but we are hurting financially just because with the lack of orders. And we're also having to give refunds for the Cougar Juice that was produced last week. So it's a tough time in our history. It's still open, but we'll have to see what the future holds for us just because it's going to be really tough to keep operating at a deficit like we are. So Conrad's Kool-Aid Factory is still open, but it's on life support. Let's just put it that way. So there's a lot of things that we need to get better at before we do make more Kool-Aid. And I don't have any creative flavors for you. We're just going to keep producing what we've got and see what the future holds for us. I'm sure that'll be exciting as it always is with Texas Tech football. You have no clue what to expect, and they always break your heart. So Conrad's Kool-Aid Factory is open, but it's on life support.
Zyler, what do you think about the state of Conrad's Kool-Aid Factory here?
That was sorry. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, sorry. I was going to ask too. Like, were you ready for Cougar Juice? Like, were you preparing your taste buds, everything? How much Cougar Juice did you order? I guess.
See, the problem is not the Cougar Juice I ordered for myself. It was all the Cougar Juice I sent to my friends and family who are now demanding refunds. And I'm not in a position financially to recover from something like that. So we're going to have to work through something. We're going to have to find some new products to sell because the Cougar Juice did not get me out of my financial position. So tough place to be right now as a chief executive of Conrad's Kool-Aid Factory.
Yeah, man, you were just named CEO too, so not a great start into your your tenure so far. And I've got a lot to clean up.
You know what they say?
What do they say?
It's pressure's a privilege. So I'm gonna go out there and make some sales, and we're gonna make this thing work.
Here we go, man. Well, we'll see. I mean, I'll be cleaning up a lot, I guess. Conrad is the chief custodial officer. I guess I got a lot to do this week.
Yeah. And we've also got to get some new employees, but after what happened last night, I really don't know that we could pay any amount of money to get someone to work at our factory. I mean, it's a depressing work environment right now. On Glassdoor, our ratings just went down terribly. I mean, it's a tough place to be. I thought we paid well, but I guess we don't anymore. And the work culture was just awful, just because of the state of our program. So the Kool-Aid Factory has seen better days. Like I said in previous episodes, the off season is the best time for a Texas Tech football fan. But now that we're in season, we're really struggling at the Kool-Aid Factory and in Red Raider Nation as a whole. So,
I mean, yeah, what I would take to go back to August 30th right now. I mean,
Exactly.
this is just
Business was booming.
It was booming, man.
Yep.
Yeah, the stock prices were soaring. Well, yeah, and well, if you're sorry, Z, go ahead.
No, you're good. Keep going.
I was gonna say, and if you're tuning in, we're assuming that you did see what happened on Saturday night. The Texas Tech Red Raiders were defeated by a fairly good margin. It was really never close, actually. I mean, the game was we never really had an opportunity to win the game at all, which is even more deflating. And so we're here to kind of go through that and react to what we saw on Saturday night in Pullman. We saw their quarterback break a rushing record. We saw them somehow beat us by 3 touchdowns, and we had more yards total than them. It was just a completely deflating game all the way around. And so I guess where I want to start is, Zyler, I'll go to you first. Where do you blame this loss on, and how much of the blame do you want to give out? So, like, what percentage of the blame is on the quarterback, the coach, the coordinators? Where do you stand after this game on Saturday night?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting way to frame the question on how you view the problems with Texas Tech. For me personally, I'm going to put like 60% of that loss on Barron. I don't, I hate to rag on guys. I don't know what they game plan. I don't know what they saw. I don't know how healthy they are. What changed in coverage. There's a lot of things that I don't know, but just what I was able to see from Barron was really, really tough. He was 4 for 16 with 2 interceptions last night on passes beyond 10 yards. That's terrible. I mean, that's about as bad as it gets. And then he was 3 for 11 when under pressure last night, and he was clean on 80% of his dropbacks. It felt higher than that, but the offensive line actually did a pretty good job. So I'll go 60% Barron. I'll probably sit around 25% on Kitley. I just don't know. Something is broken with our scheme. Something doesn't make sense. Something is wrong. I'll give 10% to Joey. Just general head coaching. You got to own some of that stuff. And then 5% on DeRuyter. I thought he did a good job. The team looked a lot better on the backside. They just got put in some awful positions. The defense, Washington State started on our side of the field like 4 or 5 times in the night, and that's a really hard position to put your defense in. So that's kind of where I lay the blame as it stands currently.
Conrad?
Yeah, I'll go 50% on Barron. He just did not play well last night, missed a lot of throws. I don't know if he was out of sync. He felt off, obviously, compared to what we saw in week 1. Because even in week 1, your offense looked incredible. Barron played really, really well, but I think he just missed some throws last night. Did a lot of things that you typically wouldn't expect out of him, especially with what we saw the week before. So I'd go 50% with him, 25% with Kitley. I'm pretty disappointed. Our scheme, like Zyler said, it feels broken. We love to throw screen passes, and I'm not upset about throwing screens, but when you throw an exorbitant amount of screens and your receivers aren't the best blockers, like they're okay, they're not exceptional. The scheme, it just felt something was wrong. Early in the game, you were running the ball well, and we just kind of abandoned that. You didn't really stick to it as what I would like you to see. The stats on the back end didn't look that great, but I'd blame Kitley just because I don't see, there wasn't really it didn't feel like there was an actual plan. If I'm honest, it just felt discombobulated all the way around. Then I'd go 15% with Joey. I'm still just frustrated at not necessarily the way he answered questions last night, but you're the leader of the program. You get paid more than anybody else. You're over it all. And this is the product we see on the field. And then I'd probably give 10% after that to DeRuyter. He was much better than last week. The defense was much improved. You tackled better. Your secondary was better. The quarterback for Washington State really didn't throw the ball that well. He had a couple of good throws, but other than that, he really didn't do much damage to the air. It was really through the ground. He missed a lot of throws. And so your secondary was better. But I'd probably give 10% to DeRuyter there. So that'd be my breakdown of where the blame goes.
Yeah, and I think all that's fair. For me, looking at last night, Zyler, I think you said this a couple weeks ago, but you said it feels like Kitley calls plays, not a system. Like, I believe that was you. And it's, And that's what it felt like last night. And you're putting people in positions, and yeah, maybe they don't trust Barron. We were texting about that last night, that this team doesn't trust Barron if he's 4-16 for 2 interceptions past 10 yards. Maybe they don't trust him. Barron missed some deep balls yesterday. Receivers were looking one way, Barron was dropping the ball the other. There was just a ton of miscommunication, but that was Barron's first, what I would call like healthy road start in a couple, years. And I said this on the pregame show that I thought this was a Barron statement game. And man, was I wrong. Like I thought that Barron would go out and throw. Oh, and Z, you're on mute, by the way, brother. I don't know if you. There you go.
He did make a statement. It was just not the one that we were hoping for.
Right. It was a very poor statement, and I think that I don't know if we should judge Barron solely off one road game without Taj Brooks, with an average offensive line, and where that blame falls, and if we should call for Will Hammond game 2. I'm not saying that. I just think that he had an opportunity to go out and show that he can make the throws. I mean, he was missing 5-yard out routes. He was sailing balls over guys. I would put about 50% of the blame on Barron, but I would in turn equal that with Kitley. The defense, I'm not going to over harp on. They did what they needed to do for you to win. They forced turnovers. They got some stops. They forced the team into field goals. You did not lose this game because you gave up 35. What was it? Was it 36? I don't even know. 37 to 16. 37. Yeah. At the end of this game, like that they were put in positions on fourth down, and some questionable fourth downs. Like, are you sure every time you're on your own side of the 50, you need to go for it if it's 4th and 4 or less? I don't know if that's the right thing to be doing at this point. Maybe take your chances with a punt, but you had some bad special teams too. I mean, to come right out of the gate, muffed return, a shank of a punt that turned into points. Like, there was nothing that really went well from the jump. And to me, that is coaching. At some point, like where Wyoming lost, Washington State lost. That's back-to-back years where you've just gone on the road and lost your team. Like you had no clue at any point, like, who are we? What is our identity? And to me, that is coaching, not establishing that. And I would put most of the blame on Kitley on the offensive side as well. I mean, you had situations where Dre McCray was trying to block on the outside on a screenplay, or Mason Tharp was running the tight end slip instead of Jay. Like, it just doesn't seem like we're putting a lot of people in positions to succeed. And if you don't have a quarterback that you trust, then that's a problem. But I just still feel like there's no identity to this team 2 games in, and the reality is we should be 0-2, and it feels like we're 0-2. And so this start to this year is no much better than last year, and you've got to figure it out quick. And so I think a lot of the blame falls to the offensive staff, the quarterback, and Joey. And I'd give them each, like, I'd lump Barron and Kitley into a 75% and the rest on Joey, because you've got to be ready to play, man. And you weren't ready to play from minute 15 in quarter 1.
Yeah, does this season's start feel worse than last year's?
I
Conrad?
think that's so hard to quantify, because last year in week 2, you played a respectable opponent and you should have actually won that game, which you didn't, but you should have. Yeah, you're 1-1 this year. You were 0-2 last year, but honestly, with the Kool-Aid that was being dished out in the offseason, and just what you expected with the transfers you had coming in, Micah, all these guys, I think for me, this year feels worse, because it's not about, I don't really think it's about the record to me at this point in non-conference. It's just, you look like a terrible football team. Like, I mean, other than the receivers, what do you really, and Taj Brooks, like, what do you really feel good about? And no offense to the receivers or Taj Brooks, but those groups really aren't going to win you games. Like, they're not going to win you games if you don't have a quarterback that you trust, if you don't have a defense that you feel confident in can go get you a stop when you need to. And right now, I don't feel like you have any of that. Whereas last year, you at least had a respectable defense. I know the defense played better last night, but it just feels from top to bottom like a really bad place to be. And maybe I'm overreacting just because the game was, so what you didn't expect, but it feels worse this year to me, because I'm not even really thinking about the record. And plus, it's year 3 of the same coaching staff. Looking this bad in year 3, versus looking this bad, which I think you can say we look pretty bad both years. In year 2, I don't see how you can look this bad in year 3 and for people to be like, yeah, it's okay. We still give them time. So I would say probably this year, but then again, I'm living in this year. I'm not living in last year. So that's how I'd see it.
Yeah, Z, I'm going to say last year just because of the preseason hype you had. I mean, this team was picked to finish 9th compared to 4th the previous year. Everyone was high on Tyler Shuck, healthy. Everybody was high on Jaron Bradley. I mean, he was first team, all preseason Big 12. Like, there was a lot of just what the heck happened to start 1-3 last year. You've still got, and I'll say this year. I mean, am I hopeful? Sure. Do I want this to happen? Of course. You still have 3 games at the Jones where the best team you're playing is Arizona State, who was picked to finish 14th or 15th in the conference. So, like, they are not significantly better than you, even with your diminished injuries, which we'll get into later in the show. Like, there's still a chance you could be 4-1. I said at worst you're 4-1. Z, you picked us to lose this game. You were right, and then some. So, the season's not like over by any point. I don't want to say like, are we going to be 1-3 in 2 weeks? If you are, then you need to jump ship. I mean, like, I don't think Kirby's going to be sitting there if we're 1-3 with 2 losses at home against North Texas, Arizona State, and an overtime win against Abilene Christian, and let this coaching staff in its entirety, not Joey specifically, ride. So I'm going to say last year just solely because of the expectations. They weren't as high this year, but it's nonetheless a completely deflating moment coming off that loss, the way we lost to Washington State.
Yeah, I think those are actually, both of y'all gave really, really good points. I think both of those are really well defendable and really rational. To me, this year feels worse for whatever reason. Yeah, 1-3 starting last year was terrible, and then starting 0-2. But it, like you said earlier, it feels like you've lost both games. We have not whined about the refs yet one time this year because we've been so bad. Like, that's one of the best parts of being in close games is getting mad at the refs, getting mad at, just random things. Like, we don't even talk about that. We talk about, do we have a good team? Is our coach, like, that stuff sucks. That's the terrible part of being a fan. And after the Oregon game last year, I remember leaving that game really encouraged. I was like, you have a pretty good team. You hung in there with that team. It wasn't fluky. It wasn't like you were getting a bunch of, pick sixes and punt returns and things like that. Like, you hung in there and you fought with them. You haven't really seen anything from this team that's exciting. And it's back-to-back weeks now where one group looks just absolutely putrid. The defense was terrible in week 1, and the offense was disgusting this week. I'll go with this year feeling worse just because the trajectory seems way worse. You seemed like you were at least on the upward trend after 2 games last year, even though you were 0-2.
And that leads back to just a conversation that we're not going to have necessarily on this episode because it's not the purpose of what we're trying to do, but just even zooming out about the state of the program. I mean, seeing what happened last year and then seeing what's happening this year, it just leads you to ask some questions that I don't think anybody has answers to at this point. And you would be hoping that you would be 2-0 and feel good about your team this year, especially in year 3 of a coaching staff. But because you feel as bad as you do, and because you have as many coaching questions as you do, as many position group questions as you do, I'm not saying it's going to be perfect every single year. You're going to have to deal with things that aren't necessarily perfect. But when you're feeling like this in year 3 under the same coaching staff that you've built momentum with, I just do think there are a lot of questions to be asked. And I think you're going to see fan engagement. This is a guess on my end, but I think you're going to start to see fan engagement drop. Assume, like, if we do lose to North Texas, if we do start 1-3, I just think you're going to see a lot of fan engagement drop. And when you have fan engagement drop, that's when you enter the latter Cliff years. And that's when you enter the latter Wells years. And that's when your program is just not in a fun spot at all. And when you have people that just, quite frankly, don't care anymore. And I think you're trending towards that at this point, given with how you started last year and how you started this year.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I want to remain hopeful and be like, all right, there's somehow, some way going to be a scenario where we're 4-1 at the end of September because you get 3 games at the Jones. And I'm trying to stay on that level. Like, this game to me yesterday didn't matter. It showed flaws and you got injuries, but like in terms of where you could be, but how can we sit here and say that you're going to be 4-1? Like, I'm not even confident we're going to beat North Texas. which is not a place you want to be as a program at all. And so that's where this problem lies for me. And I think that we've got a lot of issues, and at some point someone has to answer that question. I don't know who it is. You can't, who are you going to fire? Like who are you going to blame the game on, and how are you going to move forward to get this stigma off of our back that we've had, quite frankly, since 2010? Like, this has been a program that has not competed, and there's no reason that Baylor, TCU, Oklahoma State, that these schools aren't significantly more prestigious, arguably don't even have as much funding in their athletic program, at least in the last couple of years, that we've put in. These are schools that are playing for Big 12 titles, that have won Big 12 titles, Kansas State, and have played for national titles. And we can't even, that's not even Texas and OU. They're gone. The sad thing about this year, too, is that OU and Texas are gone, and Arizona struggled to beat North Arizona at home. Kansas State struggled to beat Tulane. Colorado got smoked at Nebraska. And I know we'll get into these games, but it's not like the Big 12 is looking like this powerhouse conference, and you get a pretty easy schedule, and we aren't even confident we're going to beat North Texas. I think
the line for that game opened up at 10.5. That means I think you'd be a 7-point favorite on a neutral field, basically, like a touchdown difference. You'd be a 1-score game if you played it in, Jerry World or something like that, which is crazy.
That's crazy. So
if y'all had to pick one word to describe how you feel after last night, what would it be?
I'm not allowed to say it on air.
Well, pick something that's appropriate for listeners of all ages.
Deflated.
Okay.
It's not embarrassed. It's not embarrassing. It's just I'm like crestfallen. I'm just the wind's just completely taken out of my sails. It reminds me of the GIF you've probably all seen on Twitter, where it's Cliff and Davis Webb, and they're in those stupid gray ombre jerseys, and they're watching some sort of play, and then you can tell it goes badly, and they all just start to cover their faces and turn away. Like, that's kind of how I feel. I know you didn't ask for a tech Twitter GIF, but that's what I'm going to give you.
Well, hey, we're always here for tech Twitter GIFs. I will use the word embarrassed. That's actually what I said last night in numerous texts to numerous people, because I was selling the Kool-Aid and hyping us up because I really did believe in our team. I am embarrassed, and I think you as a program are, obviously it's just football, but I think you're embarrassing your university by the way you're playing, and by the effort you're putting in, and by the product that's on the field. That's just not what we would want, or nor what we should expect from our football team. And so I'll use the word embarrassed. It takes a lot for me to get to that point, but I think it's only backed up by the fact that we're barely predicted to beat North Texas at home. I mean, that's embarrassing to me. They're just not on your level, and it just adds into the fact that we beat Abilene Christian by 1 point at home. Remember, Abilene Christian. So I'll use the word embarrassed.
You never want to hear the words pivotal game against North Texas at home on your season. That's just not something you want to have associated.
Yeah, in September.
But imagine if you go in September. But imagine if you go beat North Texas by a field goal. I mean, I'm glad you won, but golly, what does that mean for the next week and the next week and the next week?
Would you take that result right now, or would you roll the dice?
The fact that you're even asking me that question, I can't even bring myself to answer it. Like,
I'm not even kidding. I would take the result. I would take the result.
I would take it.
I mean, I probably would too, but like the fact that we're even having that is even a reasonable question to ask. That's why I say embarrassed, because I just don't even think that should be a question that we should have to answer or ask. But it is based on week 1 and week 2.
So we've talked a lot about, program stuff. We should probably talk about the game itself a little bit specifically. Mm-hmm. What were you guys seeing, offensively that, maybe talk about some good things, maybe talk about some bad things. There's a lot of bad things, but, anything that you'd want to note on from the offensive performance specifically?
I'll start positive. I think Cam Dickey has a lot of potential and showed that he is kind of like a young Taj 2.0. I mean, the dude is a specimen. He's big. He's strong. He's got a low sense of gravity to the ground where he can drive his legs. I mean, you saw like, okay, I see why this guy's playing as a true freshman. And I think he'll get a lot of minutes the rest of the way, especially if Taj is injured. And that's about it. I really I don't think there is anything else to say. I mean, the fact that you had to throw a lateral pass from Coy Aiken to John Carlos Miller as your lone touchdown until it didn't matter is completely deflating. I mean, that
You're gonna make me cry.
that was the touchdown that you had.
It was a dime, though. It was a dime.
Hell, maybe Coy Aiken should be starting at quarterback here in the middle of the year.
Cowboy
Coy can do it all, man. I mean, that there's really nothing to say. And in fact, I mean, I know we're going to get into injuries again, but that's not looking very good either on your offensive line. So there's nothing to be said offensively for me in a positive sense outside of Cam Dickey after Saturday night.
I think the offensive line is played better than they did against ACU, which is encouraging for me on the coaching side of that. That's a better defensive line, but I still think they're worse than what I thought they would be coming into the year. So they were really worse after the ACU game, and I think they improved on that performance. I would echo your Cam Dickey sentiment. I think your receivers are still good. You just have a hard time getting them the ball.
Yeah, I would agree with both of those. I do think Josh Kelly just continues to shine as a bright spot. I mean, I think he had 9 catches for 96 yards. So, I mean, the dude he's probably the best receiver you've had since, I don't even know.
Antoine Wesley.
He may be better than Antoine Wesley. I mean, that you had, because he's fast. He's shifty. He can move. So seeing him, I mean, he's fun to watch. He's just what you would want in a receiver that's a senior. I think he's a redshirt senior, so he'd be a bright spot for me. But other than what you both said, I can't think of anything on the offensive side of the ball that I would say is positive.
You know, if I had to jump into negative pieces, I think Brennan mentioned it earlier. Dre McCray is a great weapon. I don't know why we are using him as a blocking receiver on screens. Our screens, when we don't use him, we're fine. I don't know what the thought was there. Mm-hmm. Also, the tight end triple option didn't work the one time we ran it, and I don't know why we ran it with Tharp. That didn't make any sense to me. And then we've harped on it a lot, but Barron was just all over the place last night. He wasn't setting his feet. I mean, how often did you see a 3, 5, or 7 step drop where it was very simple, routine, timing, methodical? It never felt like that. It felt like he was never in rhythm. It was never on time. And he was just missing guys. Brennan said, I mean, he was missing 5-yard out routes. That critical drive where we ended up having to go for it on 4th with Jalen Conyers. I think it was 2nd and 3, and he misses that out route, and then he misses a deep ball, and then you run. It was just, and they were gettable. They were so gettable. It was incredibly frustrating to see Barron probably play his worst game as a Red Raider.
Yeah, in terms of when he's fully healthy, yeah. Because there's no excuse for him now. Like he has a fully healthy shoulder. I mean, he was throwing balls deep yesterday. They just were missing everybody in sight. There wasn't even one that
wasn't even close.
Wasn't even close. There wasn't one that was catchable even. And see, to that point, this is why I go 50-50 with Kitley on the offense. Like, you're not ever running those plays. Like, how often did we watch Barron 3-step drop, 5-step drop, 7-step drop, and just, drop back and pass? Like, I think when you're like having to bring reads into every play, when you're having to read if it's an RPO or is it a quick slant, like there was a play in the second half yesterday where he threw, I think it was like 2nd and 13, but he threw an 8-yard curl route in between the zone. And then even the play that didn't work, but it was like a 4-yard mesh route to Coy Aiken. I was like, why aren't we running those routes on first down? Like, why, the Douglas play worked great where he had like a 35-yard run on a little mesh route, simple throw. Not these RPO, like getting your quarterback into a rhythm of throwing the ball downfield. Because if you're just throwing the ball sideline to sideline and throwing 20-yard screen plays, quick timing throws on a screen, I mean, I was 7th grade B team quarterback, so I'm not speaking from experience here whatsoever. But like, I'd imagine that's a hard time to get into a rhythm that way, where you're not dropping back, reading some defenses, throwing curl routes, throwing out routes. Like, it just seemed like that. And that's back to the identity. Like, Barron threw the ball, 58 times yesterday? And out of 34 completions, I didn't think there was one that was like, that was sexy. There was nothing like that. And so that's where I go. I feel like it's schematically to a point where it's Barron's fault. And this is Barron's third year in this system with Kitley. And that's what you're getting. Like, if you're a third year quarterback with the same offensive coordinator, you would assume you got the offense down. You've got timing down. You've formed an identity. This is Taj's fourth, fifth year in the system. Like, at some point, it's like, give me a break, dude. And, and I get his dad, and I'm just gonna say it. Like, I get his dad's a coach. I get he went here. I get he coached on the Cliff, but like, I've seen enough personally where like I want to see a different system and like to see players set up well. That just drives me nuts watching our offense.
I think there's two ways to look at the offensive scheme. The first way is that's just who Kitley is and what he wants to call, which honestly at this point I feel like that's a fair take. And the second, which would be much more unfortunate, is that you just don't trust your quarterback. And if either one of those are true, you've got big problems. For example, if you don't trust your quarterback, and this is Barron's third year in the system, he was a 4-star recruit, you're telling us that he's not actually that good and you really don't believe in him, I've got some serious questions of why you didn't go get somebody else better. If that's actually what you think. I'm not saying that's what they think. I'm just saying that if that's true, then that's what you think, and that's why you're running the system you're running. I've just got some huge problems with that. I mean, I just think that's very problematic for your team. But on the other hand, if that's just what your scheme is, it just doesn't work. It may have worked at Western Kentucky. It may have put up points there. You also did have an NFL quarterback in Bailey Zappi who, I mean, is pretty good. I would take him over Shuck or Barron right now in college because he was incredible. I just don't know why you're running the system you're running. And I don't know why you're calling the plays you're running and that you're calling. And I think you doing that over and over again. I mean, I watched tons of college football yesterday, and you watch Nebraska, you watch, these other teams, you watch Alabama, who pulled away at the end, you watch Georgia, all these other teams, they have an identity. They know what they're doing. Their players are well coached. Our offense doesn't resemble anything close to what any of these other offenses looked like at all. I mean, even look at TCU. I mean, they played nobody, but they looked like a real football team, and we just look like a disorganized, combobulated group of people that we can't even figure out what we're doing. And when we actually call plays that seem semi-smart, they just don't work because you don't execute. So that's just a long monologue on that, but that's kind of how it seems to me from the Kitley point of view. And I think I'm with Brennan. I just don't know. I just don't know what's going to change to make that offense effective here, because I don't think it's really effective anywhere else, to be honest.
Yeah, and Washington State was running the exact same scheme across from you, and I didn't think their offense looked very good at all. It was basically QB broken run plays and QB runs. I mean, you got beat by discount version Lamar Jackson. Like, can't throw the ball, just runs it all the time. That's who beat you last night. I mean, he had 9 completions, and I guess we could, transition into the defense. I personally didn't think they played that bad. I think they got put in a ton of really crappy situations. And then they made some stops, like Chapman had that interception. That was great to see the secondary making a play on the ball. That was great. I thought Sanford looked fine when he had to replace Chapman on the targeting call. You had some 4th down stops I was impressed with, like stuff that you just did not see in the ACU game. And this was a slight step up in competition. I thought Braylon Lux helped a lot. You didn't even hear his name called because they weren't even throwing at him. You did get fortunate. The Washington State receivers dropped like 3 third-down completions throughout the night. That was fortunate. Their receivers are not that talented. And then you caught some terrible breaks. The Morian Horn break up in the end zone that just bounces off the dude's helmet into his arms. That's incredibly unfortunate. And then you were down now your 4 top edge rushers. So Harvey Dyson's out, Adedere is out, Spencer's is out, Esters is out. So the guys that would have been on your 3 deep are now your starters, and your 4 deep guys are your depth pieces. That is not an ideal combination for winning. And I thought the defensive line looked fine. I didn't think they looked great, but they looked better than they did against ACU. They clearly fixed a lot of their issues. I thought Roberts made some improvements. He didn't look as lost in zone coverage. Baskerville still struggles with foot speed and kind of reading his run fits, but I didn't have any qualms with the defense. I think they looked fine.
Conrad?
Yeah, I agree. I think we're talking about how bad the defense looked this last week, and now we're talking about how bad the offense looked this week. So I completely agree with everything Zyler said. Optimistic about the defense based on last night. You did get some unlucky breaks, but they played much better. I don't think anyone is blaming the defense at all for this week's loss, which is just so backwards from last week. So I don't know what next week's roller coaster is going to bring, but this week sure is interesting based on what we saw the week before.
Yeah, and agreed across the board. I said on last week's episode that you need timely stops, and they got that. I mean, like, the 37 points wasn't all their fault. Like you said, Z, you go for a fourth down, very next play, 43-yard rush. You turn the ball over, you throw a bad interception, they're starting on their side of the field. When Washington State had to go 75 yards, you did a fairly good job out, and you got them to third downs. I mean, everything that we said the Tech defense needed to do to win that game, they did.
You're absolutely right.
And so,
yeah, absolutely.
And that shows, I think, I'm not trying to just bring this on Kitley every time, but like DeRuyter, for instance, is a good coordinator. And we talked about this. He saw tape. He played against him. He knew how to defend it, and he stopped the pass. We thought Washington State was going to go throw for 500 yards, and they could barely, throw for what, 150?
I think it was like 120.
120. So
but their quarterback rushed for 197.
Well, yeah, now that's a different. I mean, that's a
whole different thing.
Like Z said, we thought that 2-star from Little Elm turned into Lamar Jackson at Louisville for a game, and we've seen that story before on our defense as well. So there's nothing about the defense. I mean, outside of the health that concerns me at this point. Our hope for this season was, can we go outscore people? And now that doesn't look likely at all. So I really don't know where to go here, dude. I'm trying. I'm like, man, can we just stay healthy enough? Like, we're not playing Texas or you this year. Like, there's got to be a way. And maybe there is. I don't know. But was there anything injury-wise permanently easy that going on? What's the update on Scurry and Dyson and Porcher specifically?
Yeah, we'll have a lot more information on Monday's press conference when Joey comes out and gives his injury report. But it looked like Scurry wasn't putting any weight on that left knee. I'm going to just go ahead and guess that he's done for the season. That was your prized portal recruit. He was easily the best lineman last week, was probably the best one this week. I haven't seen the PFF grades yet, but he's going to be a big loss if you lose him at left guard. Now, you have more players at the guard positions. They're all just going to be young. It's going to be the same thing on the defensive tackle spot. Like, these are going to be redshirt freshmen and redshirt sophomores that are going to have to step up there. Porcher looked like he got banged up. I've never been a huge Porcher fan, but he actually was okay last night. Merriman, the JUCO kid, will be your left tackle there. I'll be interested to see how they set everything up there, but that's another, injury loss that you cannot afford at a position you definitely don't want to lose guys at.
Conrad, you got any thoughts on maybe Conrad, give us your thoughts on what is it? Is it why does Tech get injured so much? Are we weak? Or do we hit each other enough in practice? Do we not hit enough in practice? Like, we're 2 weeks into the year and you've lost half your offensive line. Todd didn't play. Lux hasn't played. Guys are getting pushed around left and right. And this is against FCS, Abilene Christian. And by the way, I've had some Abilene Christian friends be like, "Hey man, come on, you guys were really crapping on Abilene Christian." I'm like, "No, dude, it's Abilene Christian, bro. It doesn't matter." My older brother played football at Abilene Christian, and he was just giving me a hard time for roasting ACU so much. But I don't care. It's ACU. And then Washington State, dude, like a team that got left. Nobody wanted you. Nobody wanted you, and you smoked us. You beat us down. And so, how are we that injured, Conrad? Excuse my rant, but I just can't get over the fact that we're talking about this week 2.
Are you just trying to bait me into entertaining you both for the next 5 minutes? Because I can do that if you need me
Please.
to.
We need anything today, man.
I don't know. I'm just a guy who likes football, that watches it and keeps up with it way more than I should. I don't know why you get so injured so often, all the time. It just feels like, well, who got hurt today? Let's play bingo and say who got hurt today. It's like that's just how it feels, especially under Joey. I mean, it doesn't make any sense because you do feel, and again, I don't keep up with other schools' injury reports. I mean, I don't have the time for that. I don't think anybody does, but I wonder if schools like Baylor or like TCU that are
say
Zyler does. Zyler keeps up with
I was
those.
say I know Zyler's sitting there going, "Hey man, watch." I keep up with it.
Yeah, Zyler's sitting there Monday night at 10:00 reading Baylor and TCU and Cincinnati's injury reports. But I don't know why you get hurt the way you do. I mean, at a certain point, you do have to start asking questions like, why do we need a better weight room? I mean, you're about to get one of those.
You're about to get one.
You're about to get everything you need. You've got the nutrition staff. I mean, I would think you kind of have everything. So I don't know the answer to that question. Maybe it's like Andrew said, the Mike Leach curse. I think that could be. I mean, I don't think that's part of it, but you never know. So I don't know why, and I don't know. Maybe it's something that they're doing, they're not doing. It's just, it boggles me to even think about and try and figure out, because there really is no answer to why you get injured so much.
Yeah. I don't know. Z, you got anything on that?
Man, I don't know. I mean, some of it seems fluky. It's like, what would you do conditioning wise to prevent your Achilles from tearing, or like, how do you stop that? Like, and I know maybe there's things. I'm not a sports scientist, or I don't know anything about that. I know there's those spicy rumors about when Stephen Hamby was let go. He had some very choice words for our strength and conditioning staff. Maybe he was onto something. Maybe he wasn't. But I don't know, just unfortunate. And it feels like it's never your backup tight end that's getting hurt. It's always like, oh, this very critical piece on your team is going to be out for the season starting week one. Like, that's how it always feels. And it's just frustrating.
Yeah.
And it's wild how we haven't, actually at this point it doesn't really matter, but we haven't really seen a quarterback injury yet this year, at least that we know about.
Oh, dude. Imagine Barron goes down.
I mean, we could just forfeit the rest of the season if that happens. Like, I don't know.
And
maybe Will Hammond can do something.
We haven't even talked about Taj. We haven't even talked about Taj being out and then how that affected the game. I think he would have helped you he would have helped you a lot last night. But man,
yeah.
And I've heard the rumor on the street is he's out like 2 to 3 weeks, but we'll see.
Okay. All right. Well,
Conrad's response says all you needed to know there.
We were expecting to release a Taj time Kool-Aid flavor, but that's probably not going to happen at this point. So we'll withdraw that from production.
Dude, and I'll say this too on that. And then I have one question before we move to the Big 12 rundown really quickly. If Taj is out next week, I'm fine with that. I still think your season starts September 21st at this point. And like, you just got to hope and pray that whatever you got when you kick off against Arizona State is as good as it's going to be. And you can ride some wins. Like, I don't even care if we beat UNT at this point. I care that we compete in the Big 12. Now, you need to beat UNT to probably make a bowl game. But, I would love to see us beat Arizona State and Cincinnati. I'm going to believe that we're going to do that somehow. Because if you don't, we're going to be having much different conversations here at the end of September, I think. So, and with that, I'm going to ask one final question on the general program trajectory of where you think we are in y'all's mind, because I just gave a little hope, but in your mind, is this season already over? Zyler, you can go first.
Man, it's never over, but it's like you're on a ship and there's a ton of holes in your ship. And you're like, man, there's a lot of water on here and we have a lot more of a journey to undertake. We've seen this story before. We've seen the seasons where we've lost to FCS or like played FCS teams to one possession, 2020 and 2021, and you won 3 conference games. So that puts you, firmly in the 4 to 5 win territory. That's kind of where I think you're heading right now. My optimistic thing, I think Cincinnati looks worse than what you thought they were going to be. Arizona State looks way better. I think Oklahoma State and Arizona are very vulnerable. TCU looks a little bit better. Iowa State probably looks better, but there's some teams with some holes on your schedule. You don't have a Texas or an OU sitting there. There's opportunities to get teams. Nobody's going to out talent you. You should be in all of these games, or at least have the hope that you can be in all of these games.
Yep. Conrad.
Is the season over? I don't know. I wanted to give a yes or no answer, but I don't know. I definitely think that if the season keeps going the way it's going right now, yes, your season is done. Nobody will want to remember this year. You will have people that give a lot of money asking questions. Why do we give a lot of money to this program? I do think you have some bright spots if you can put it all together. But thinking about it too, what do these first 2 weeks do for the morale of your team? I mean, how do you come back from ACU and the performance on offense last night and even remotely think you're going to compete for the Big 12 title, which that's what they say is the goal. So if that's your goal, which it should be because this Big 12 is not that great, as we're going to talk about, then yeah, I think your season's pretty much done unless you can put some things together and some guys you did not expect to contribute at all can come contribute, meaning backup offensive linemen, backup edge rushers, guys like that. If you can't find something in there and Barron doesn't improve significantly, I think after what you've seen in week one and week 2, your season's probably done and you're probably already looking for next year and thinking about who your coaches are going to be, because you might have some coaches that lose their jobs unless this turns around. I don't think it's going to be Joey, but I think you could make a very real case for Kitley and some other position coaches. If this thing doesn't change and this thing doesn't turn and you don't win some games and look like a serious football program that doesn't embarrass your school, yeah, I think this season's over unless you change some things. So that'd be my blunt take on the state of your football program in this season at this point.
Yeah, that's fair. Let's just start talking about JT Toppin, Elijah Hawkins, and Grant McCasland here on this project. Should we just start talking basketball here in September? I was excited to talk about it, but I didn't think we'd have to start talking about it this early.
Dude, if we get blown out by UNT, I'm not talking about the football season again. It's over.
We're going straight to basketball. Well, with that, man, we'll hope. I'm gonna say I'm hopeful. I'm about 40% hopeful that we are 4-1 3 weeks from today. So just hold me to it. I'll go down with the ship. Hey, Conrad, whatever you're whipping up, however the Kool-Aid Factory gets put together, and I'm cleaning a lot of it up this week, whatever green monster juice is flying or green wave, I don't know what you're going to title it come this weekend, but whatever it is, I'll be chugging it on Saturday at 2:30. So just keep me there. So
yeah. We actually played 11 on Saturday, but that's cool too if you want to chug it at 2:30.
Well, I'll be chugging it after our win is what I'm saying.
Oh, okay. Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to process the fact that we're even in a conversation for a win, but that's okay.
That's fair.
You know, for a note of optimism, you were not as bad as that final score indicated. They did not play you 21 points better. Your EPA per play was different by like 0.02. You play that game 100 times, it's probably a 1-score game each and every time. You're not as bad as that final score indicated. And I think you can fix some of the stuff. Barron can make throws. Receivers can get open. It's just, you have a lot of ifs. It's like if this and if this and if this and if this all happens, maybe we can make a bowl game. And those are a lot of ifs to achieve a very, very mediocre goal.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Well, let's move to maybe some stuff that might make us happy or to talk about. I don't know. And we'll just go through this quickly. I know we're running low on time here, but Colorado got crushed against Nebraska this weekend. Iowa State came back last second against Iowa and won. They look like they're fairly competent in the Big 12. OSU survived a wacky game and an Alan Bowman taunting penalty against Arkansas, which I was hoping they wouldn't. That guy drives me nuts. Kansas. I'm like the ultimate hater of former Tech quarterbacks that are still playing football.
Except for Donnie.
You're still playing at this point. You're not very good.
I'm not getting to Donnie yet. But Z, I'm going to drop to the bottom of the list. Houston was somewhat impressive against OU, and Donovan Smith almost knocked him off, which would have been hilarious. And then BYU continued SMU's embarrassment. Cincy blew a big lead against Pitt. Arizona looked horrible against Northern Arizona at home, and then ACU dominates
ASU.
Or sorry, AC. They're
Maybe we should track
yeah.
ACU.
So what did Abilene Christian do this weekend? I don't even know.
Let's take a look.
Let's look up what Abilene Christian did. In fact, next week's episode, we should just go through. We should become an
Hey.
Abilene Christian podcast. Start tracking their schedule. Give a weekly update on
Hey,
ACU.
they beat West Georgia.
There you go.
They beat West Georgia.
There you go.
What do y'all think? What do y'all think Maverick did?
Did he throw for 400 yards?
Threw
and
for
6
300
touchdowns?
plus.
Dude, I bet it's not even close to that. But hopefully it was something kind of good. Let's see. I'm pulling it up. He threw for 303 touchdowns.
There you go.
That's not bad.
Hey, can I ask? I want a one-word answer from you guys. I just have to ask this question for the world to hear. Trade right now with Abilene Christian, Baron Morton for Maverick McIver. Do you do it?
No.
No.
Okay.
No.
Just had to ask.
No. He had a chance, man. He had a chance and he couldn't do it. You know, that's why
He was always hurt here, so he didn't really get a fair chance.
And then too quickly, then I'll ask y'all which game stood out the most to you. But Kansas State barely beats Tulane on the road, and then Kansas drops a game to Illinois on the road. So, like we talked about throughout this show, none of these teams look great. Iowa State got a good road win. They might be the toughest team. There was another game that technically wasn't a Big 12 game, though it's two Big 12 schools with Utah and Baylor. Utah's a completely different team with Cam Rising. Cam Rising got absolutely thrown into a water cooler and hurt his hand. I don't know how long he'll be out yet, but with Utah without Cam Rising is a much different team, and Baylor didn't look special either, and they're also on your schedule. So which game stood out to you the most? Or are there a couple, if you want to pick a couple of these games that you watched, anything in particular that you want to make note of? Z.
Dude, Oklahoma State's ability to play in the dumbest games imaginable and still always seem to win them blows my mind. We're like the exact opposite of that. We'll play in the dumbest game you've ever seen and get absolutely curb stomped. They did lose Colin Oliver, I think, for the year. That's what Gundy said. So that is a big blow for their defense. He is a really, really good player. But of course, they found guys that can somehow replicate that production. They did not deserve to win that game. Arkansas made some of the most insane errors I think I've ever seen a team commit in like 17 minutes of game time. It was unbelievable how many times they shot. They had to shoot themselves in the foot so many times. They had to reload and then keep shooting. It was unbelievable what they did out there. I think the players are getting paid to get Sam Pittman fired. Something has to be going on there. That was unreal. Only other game, Jalen Daniels looked terrible against Illinois. I mean, he looked awful. I do not think he's like an upgraded version of John Mateer. So thankfully we don't play them this year, or he rushed for 300. And then I guess the only other real note, Utah's defense is legit. They absolutely stifled Baylor. I think they had less than 40 yards in the first half or something ridiculous like that. Like, could not do a single thing. Utah could have won by 60 if Cam Rising would have stayed healthy. They destroyed Baylor.
Yeah, Conrad.
The Colorado-Nebraska game was fascinating to me. That stadium is unbelievable. I mean, Nebraska and Texas A&M have a lot of similarities. They love their teams, even when they're terrible, and they always fill their stadium. So Nebraska's sold out. I don't even know how many games in a row, but Nebraska actually seems like they have something in their quarterback, their defense. It looks like a completely different team. I know that's not the Big 12 team that we're supposed to be talking about, but they're not a Big 12 team. But when Colorado goes in there and gets absolutely destroyed like they did, I mean, it's hard not to notice Nebraska in terms of what they have. And Colorado their offensive line was absolutely terrible. So that was an interesting game. That looked like a really fun environment to be in. And then Houston almost going into Norman and winning that game. I'm extremely excited to go to Norman on Saturday and watch Tulane play Oklahoma, because I do think that's going to be an interesting game, especially with what happened this past weekend. So interesting. Maybe Houston's better than we thought they were, or maybe OU's just much worse than we thought they were. So it'll be an interesting game. But just thinking about those two right off the schedule was interesting to me.
Yeah.
Put me firmly in the camp that OU is way worse than everybody thought they were. I mean, Houston, I think you're right. Like 30 plus by UNLV at home. I'm going to go OU is fraudulent this year.
I hope you're right.
Maybe they want to come back to the Big 12.
I don't want them here, honestly. I will say this too. that Utah healthy offensively with Cam Rising is like exactly who you'd want to see, and or how you'd want to see your offense run. Like whoever, I always forget his name on Fox, but he was saying that this is an NFL offense. Like Cam Rising's making audibles, he's checking at the line, he's getting under center, they're running bootlegs, they're running all these things, and you're like, golly, dude, like this team is in our conference and they've got a super senior quarterback, and I get he's been there a long time, and it's just like, why can't we have that or any resemblance of that? I was so envious watching Utah. Other than
Brennan, we are Texas Tech football. We cannot have nice things. We got one nice thing. We got Patrick Mahomes, and we're never getting a nice thing again. So that's just who we are.
We'll see, man. I don't want to give up yet. Micah Hudson could be a nice thing. He caught it. Hey,
who?
He got a screen pass.
He caught a pass.
Yeah, he got a pass.
Who?
Dude, at this rate of acceleration, I mean, so he caught 0 passes last week, 1 pass this week. I mean, he's going to have 40 plus catches by the end of the year.
Come on, man.
It's going to be great.
Honestly, I will say this as we close, before we go to Tech trivia. If you're like 1-4, go ahead and just put Cam Dickey, Will Hammond, Micah Hudson on the field and John Carlos Miller, and let them ride. Like, I'd rather go 1-11 and like let the future get a ton of experience and just be like, let those dudes figure it out. Put all the freshmen, all the sophomores, and let them play so that next year we, have a fighter's chance. But
I think you're going to unintentionally have to do that this year anyway because people keep getting hurt.
That's what it looks like. Yeah, that's exactly what it looks like. So anyways, with all the Big 12, my main takeaway from all those games is that there's no one on your schedule that should still terrify you. And that's why maybe there's an opportunity here to still go in and try to find a way to play good football, find an identity, and come September 21st, you can ride whatever identity that is for 9 games and hope for the best. So with that, Z, this is my favorite part of the show because it always gets my brain working, and you know how to ask just great and phenomenal questions. What is our Tech trivia question of the day as we close out our reaction episode just from a depressing loss to Washington State?
Okay, this one, not as tricky as some of the other ones, but who is the single game passing yards leader for Texas Tech? And can you name this season in which they passed for that record? Okay. And then the answer may surprise you.
My first thought is Cody Hodges in 2003. Because if I remember correctly, I think he threw for and I might be wrong, but 600 plus yards in this game.
So Cody Hodges in 2005 is fifth with 640.
2005. That's fifth? Yep. Wait, I'm sorry. Yep. 600. What is fifth?
643 is
okay,
fifth.
So I wasn't totally off on it, but okay.
No.
Wow. Okay.
It has to be. Doesn't it have to be Patrick with 734 passing yards against Oklahoma in 2016? That crazy 66-59 game. Doesn't that have to be it? I mean, if someone's thrown for more yards than that,
is the correct answer.
Let's go, baby. I know my Patrick Mahomes trivia.
I wondered if somebody would go back into those, the BJ Simmons, Cody Hodges eras, because there are guys, man. They were absolutely slinging it. BJ Simmons had 660 against Ole Miss in 2003. They were putting up crazy numbers.
Maybe that's what game I was thinking of, because I remember being on a Cub Scouts camp out, and BJ Simmons, and my dad gave me, I don't know how he saw it because there weren't phones back then. Maybe they were listening on the radio or something. And he was 660 yards, something crazy. And I was 8 years old being like, did we win? And
you probably didn't win.
And you
don't win at anything.
Yeah. And so, I remember that. And then, but Cody Hodges too. I guess I should have chose Conrad with the easy answer. We needed a Mahomes trivia to brighten our mood today.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I thought that was 734 total yards. He probably had over 800 yards of offense that game, didn't he?
It was 819.
Yeah.
It was 819 total
That
yards.
is absurd.
5 passing touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns, 7 total, and you still lost the game. But at least it was fun to watch.
It was fun to watch. We were all there, man. We were all there.
Dude, that 2003 BJ Simmons season, he had 660 against Ole Miss. He had 586 against NC State, and then 552 against Oklahoma State. I mean, he was absolutely cooking. Those are all top 10 performances.
Absurd.
Well, and let me say this about BJ Simmons. BJ, if you are listening or if you are watching, you are more than welcome to come on the show. We would love to talk to you about those games and go back into a time where we actually looked good or great on offense. So we would love to have you on and hear about your experience behind center, throwing for 660 yards in one game.
Yeah.
So you're more than welcome to come on the show.
Yeah, BJ, check your Twitter. I'm pretty sure Conrad Mills might have already reached out to you, man, to get you on. And we can't.
Yeah.
Everyone comment and at BJ Simmons as you're listening to this and get him on the show. We want BJ, man. That's who we need to revive our season. So, well, great question, Z.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts, boys, as we close out this episode?
Let us know how you're feeling in the YouTube comments below. Tell us what you think. Tell us if you think we're right, wrong, off base, if we're onto something. Tell us how you feel. The YouTube comments are a safe space for you and for the world to read what you have to say. But you are more than welcome to tell us what you think of our takes and join in on the conversation in the YouTube comments below.
You know, Joey's teams have always improved as the year has gone on. Now I think we're starting at the worst possible point that we have in all 3 seasons, but he has shown that he can improve teams, or at least DeRuiter and Kitley have shown that they can at least make improvements. Maybe with a healthy Taj, we figure some things out. Maybe some things can happen. I'm not saying that'll actually play out that way, but you know, it's a long season. A lot of things are going to change. Let's maybe find a way to compete in the Big 12. It's not over yet, but there's a lot of holes on the roster right now. It's going to be a lot of work for the coaching staff.
Way to bring the show to a close with some positivity, Z. We needed it. But man, this is nonetheless, we're here. We'll be here all season long. We're having fun through the pain. So Conrad, Zyler, and Clayton, we can't forget Clayton. Again, he has a fair excuse. It's his girlfriend's birthday. We'll let him go to the farmer's market or whatever you do for your girlfriend on their birthdays. I don't know. But you can follow us at the Broadway Shuffle podcast and on YouTube. Yeah, subscribe. It can be therapeutic to let your thoughts out on YouTube. I've seen that happen a lot. So subscribe in the comments.
Some of you are too honest.
Yeah.
Some of you are too honest.
There was a couple comments in there, and I'm like, man, this guy is just giving his full blown assessment of the team, and like, it's awesome. It's great. So we want to hear from you. We want to respond, and we want to hear what y'all have to say. So, and thank you for subscribing. And please, if you do find us anywhere you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, I don't know, Pandora, maybe, if that's still a thing, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Like and subscribe on YouTube as well. And then follow us on our social medias at the Broadway Shuffle podcast, the Texas Tech Sports podcast. You can find us as well. So, gentlemen, we'll be back on Thursday to discuss the North Texas game and the Kool-Aid Factory revival. And until then, Reckham Tech, and let's hope for some health for this roster. So I'll see you guys on Thursday.
Thanks, Brennan.
Thanks, Brennan. Reckham.